So I also wanted to ask, in this industry, what are some of the hiring challenges, and what are some of your frameworks? Like, how do you evaluate someone who's a fresher, someone who's intermediate, someone who's senior?
Right. That's a great question because hiring, according to me, is still one of the toughest things. There's no right answer there. Uh, in this entire journey, we've figured out a lot of things. We have figured out go to market, we have figured out sales and marketing. Hiring is something that we're still figuring out. But of course, we have some really good experiences. We have got some really good learnings. In my opinion, of course, I'll come to some of the best practices or some of the best frameworks that I've learned. But in my opinion, at this stage, at a very early stage or mid stage, think of hiring more like sales, right? Uh, you all know about growth hacking, right? You know about a growth hacking funnel, right? Uh, think of hiring more as a growth hacking funnel, where what does a growth hacking funnel talk about? How do users find you? Do they have a great first experience? Do the users stay? Can I make money? And so on. So you can draw some comparison. At this stage, what generally that we've learned or I have learned is that you cannot go about hiring the traditional process, like let's say you're going to put a job description, you're going to find you'll find a lot of candidates submitting their CV, and then you're going to do the first round of check, then you'll have multiple rounds of interviews and everything. That also works, but in my opinion what has worked out the best is that it is more of an outbound approach, right? You find different people that suits your requirement when you build out a plan on what kind of people that you want to bring into the organization, with what skill sets, what levels of experience. You'll have to reach out to these people, more of an outbound reach out, and then you'll have to sell the company. You'll have to to draw comparison with the growth hacking funnel. You'll have to build a funnel where people can find you, or you reach out to them and provide them the first great experience about the company, sell the company, what you can offer to them, and then create an atmosphere for them to stay in the company and thrive in the company by giving them freedom, by giving them different responsibilities, by stitching different things, right? That is in general, that is in my opinion what has worked out the best. Initially when I started the company, for the first 5 to 6 months, it was just on me all alone. And of course, I have not had any hiring experience earlier, right? So one of the things that I've learned the most is that in the early stages, some of your best hire comes from your network. That's the easiest way you can find some comfort. Some people whom you already know, right? It could be your good friends. It could be your if probably if you worked in a company earlier, it could be your earlier colleagues or good friends. So the first set of core people, it's always easy and better to build your through referrals and networking, like through your inner circle, because you already have that sort of a comfort, right? You already know them, right? That is, in my opinion, what has worked out the best.
Do you mean you're hiring a friend, or you're asking friends for help with hiring?
You're hiring a friend or you're hiring an old colleague, right? Who you know really well, right? That is, in my opinion, what has worked out the best.
So I guess just a question here is that in your industry or in any industry, when you're hiring a friend, how do you mitigate that risk of, like, you're friends with them, but at the same time you're also working with them? And if something goes wrong, how do you deal with that discomfort?
Of course, those expectations you have to set aside, right? Because in it can go either ways, right? Sometimes things can go wrong, or sometimes things can go great. But if you already have a good personal relationship with someone, you also know about what kind of a skill set or what kind of a professional work they will bring into the table. Many times, what we have seen, especially when it comes to hiring, completely bringing in new people, is that sometimes it's very difficult to judge somebody's skill sets, or it is very difficult to know what they can bring into the table. Or even if many times people have done extremely good in their interview process or hiring process, and later on they could not adapt to the environment, or they could not adapt to the company, right? So that is where I'm coming from, that if you already know about somebody or worked with them before, right, that is where you're already drawing some comfort in what they can bring into the table, or you have some sort of a trust with them, right? That is where that I have found it much easier to hire in the initial stages. And another thing when it comes to hiring, In terms of hiring process, this of course we learned it over a period of time. Make it more of democratized, right? When it's one person taking a decision, when one person involved in hiring, right? People usually tend to make very biased decisions. Typically, go through 2 3 stages where multiple people are involved, get everybody's opinion, have multiple rounds of discussions, and then you usually tend to make right decisions because it's very it's high likelihood that you, if it's one person taking a decision, that you can take a wrong call, right? Either you're completely biased or it could be various other factors. But when many people are involved, you everybody has a different opinion about this particular person, and then you usually it helps you make the right decision. That's another framework that has helped us a lot in terms of hiring, right? Or what we are trying to implement currently in the organization.
And there is one more thing which is, say adding onto Maqsood and giving little bit probably a framework which probably will be relevant for your users as well, is that if you look at it as like, a 2 by 2 grid of true positive, true negative, false positive, false negative, right? Google goes by the philosophy of true positive. Even now, when they are like gargantuan level, they go by a true, reducing the false positives. Okay? Meaning, don't try to get somebody who should not be in, but is seemingly he should be in. He or she should be in, right? Let me just use to be concise. I just use the word he, but you can equally use she or whatever, I don't think. I think for a early stage setup, this philosophy is super good. Right? Where you kind of cut down the, you really try to minimize the false positive. That's where I think the friend of friends definitely helps, right? Because you have the comfort factor, you understand. See, work is not just about a sheer IQ. It's about the EQ. It's about gelling together. It's about, as much as it's about reducing the friction in the industry. You don't want to have friction at every stage of. So having a constructive conversation is good. But if you realize that, hey, you have different ethos in life, then you are actually talking about creating a lot of entropy within the system. And in a startup, you cannot have a lot of energies being frittered in managing internal entropy. Right? So I'm not saying that, hey, create a Nazi organization. Right? So everybody's going to say Heil Hitler, right? Not like that, right? But essentially identifying what are the core values of the company. And that's what we have focused on here at Custiv, that we define the core values of the company and let everybody, let it be kind of a multi-party. People are looking at the same individual, still perceiving, making perceptual views from it's like a spotlight falling on a person from different angles. People are coming from different. If you see mathematically, different biases will be neutralized. They will average out, right? So that's a kind of a mathematical way to look at it. Now the natural thing is that as we are starting to grow, we're a small setup, but we are starting to grow now. Now you exhaust your first degree network very quickly. You start to exhaust your second degree network. Let's say I know 5 friends, right? And each of the 5 friends knows 5 friends. So we have got a total of 25. And over a period of time, we'll quickly exhaust those. Now, how do you address that problem? So I want to I think one thing which has worked, and I think I borrowed this with some very interesting Silicon Valley companies, is that there is a whole concept of take-home assignments, right? And we have been actually asking whether the person is a business guy or a tech guy. Of course, generative AI is now a big problem because people can do that. but we actually encourage people to use generative AI, right? Because it also helps down, because they're also investing their time to talk to us. So we say that, hey, you want to use generative AI? Please, for all means, right? But please be, first of all, honest, right? This is, of course, one of the core values that we have as a company, that you have the humility and you are humble and you're honest in your declarations. But asking people to have take-home assignments about a real problem that we have, because see, the thing is, like writing an IIT JEE or writing or coming to an interview is like a 2 hour or 1 hour snapshot. And it may be a great day for you, like Maqsood was saying, you fared well in the interview. Life is about constant decisioning and tests every day. I think that is what we want to kind of see, that how this person is going to react. So for example, if you are hiring a growth marketing, we say that, hey, we are we make them understand what is a platform business like, and so on. And as you can realize, when we are saying that we make them understand a platform business, We hold no bars that, hey, you should have 20 years of manufacturing and 30 years of AI. Right. I've seen job descriptions saying you should have 20 years of, advanced AI algorithm experience. So it's just getting very funny, right? But anyways, jokes aside, I think what we do is that, domain knowledge is good, but it's not a sufficient condition. What is more important is your ability to learn, that you're overall generalist, that you can adapt yourself, that you can learn, that you can take the feedback and learn. And that's where I think take home assignments is probably like it's appearing collegiate or studious, but I think it also tells us what is the commitment that people are having towards us.
Right.
You see, in this day and age, when people are chasing multiple opportunities, an outcome of a take-home assignment will be three ways. One, person will disappear.
Right.
Second is person will come with a shoddy job. Third is person will come with a great job, and then we can choose, and based on that person has the sufficient intellectual rigor to understand the problem. And that is how we are kind of doing. And of course, for freshers, we are extending the same take-home one to kind of offering internships with us. Okay. And it's not restricted to only, let's say, tech and product guys, but it's even reflected in HR interns, it's reflected in strategy interns, it's reflected in marketing interns. So we are taking a view that people come in, people assimilate, people work with us, and then we kind of see whether we are in the right frame of mind to gel along and change the industry here. These are just some additions on a practical level that I want to share here.
Yeah, I think even that works even for sometimes mid to senior roles or even senior roles, especially in an industry like ours. What we've seen is that start with small assignments, right? It could be a consulting role, right? Over a period of time, your consultants could become full-time employees, right? Because you've really understood them really well. They've added value to the business, and you figured that out, right? So this framework is even applicable to mid to senior roles, right? Right. You could start with small assignments, and then eventually, if you find the group, you bring them in full-time.
Yeah, I think. We could go on about hiring itself like for another 15 minutes, but like what I've found the main challenge with hiring is like in the design industry, there's so many niches. Like if I want a product designer, like that person may not be a product designer, but they're a web designer. So like, are those like some challenges that you have? Like,
I can take this one. I think definitely these are challenges, but I think that is probably we also distinguish from well-established, well-fed companies where you will have ultra specialization, right? For the kind of velocity we are looking for, if we have multiple billion neurons as separate ones, we are talking about, language can only communicate a certain bits per second, right? So we kind of see that, okay, 1 billion set of neurons or whatever neurons are there in somebody's head, we try to have people play multiple roles. Right? So for example, you could be a data engineer, you could also be a data analyst working on BI, you could be also working as a data scientist. Right? Now UI UX it's a multidisciplinary approach. Why don't we combine that into one? Now, of course, I would say that yes, as we will grow, we will talk about ultra specialization. Yes, probably yes. But in my opinion, I think keeping teams small allows for the speed and allows for failing fast. Right? I think so that's the kind of philosophy that we are doing. Also, the other thing, I think what we are doing when we really have to have ultra specialization plus this one, so we are actually talking about, because see, hiring, like I said, getting a false positive is a much bigger setback than sometimes not even doing this one. Now, how do we address that particular impasse, right? And how we are doing is that actually we are finding some partners who have special, who have the scale, if you will, to hire, and we essentially assimilate. So this is of course different from body shopping. Okay, so we are working with companies who have their clearly defined center of excellences around, let's say, UX, QA, data engineering, and so on, where we can actually balance these two things. Because in the case of such a company, because let's say if it's 1,000+ company and we have the right kind of executive alignment, we can actually change fast if we see false positives. Right. Whereas for us, it becomes a constant battle on the velocity that you want. So it's like balancing the velocity with the ultra low false positive. Right. So we found that partnering one is a good approach. And I mean, we are trying to experiment that one. And so far, I think our initial results have been fairly positive of bringing that kind of a tough balance.
So I guess like just to kind of conclude the overall look, like you're leaning mostly on specialists, but slight general skills, right? Is that the overall?
Yeah, talking about specialization, right? Another uh, point that I would like to bring in, that it also depends on at what level of people that you're bringing in, right? When you talk about an organization design, you have your core team members and leaders and managers at the top, and then you have your executions, right? Typically, what we've learned is that you need generalist and you need T-shaped skills people at the top, right? Who can think creatively. It need not come from a specific industry experience. Uh, in fact, I can cite one example. Ashwin, right, who works with us, right, heading marketing as well as partnerships. Ashwin had no experience with respect to manufacturing, right? He came from an electronics engineering background, but today he's one of the few guys in our company who understands manufacturing so well, right? In terms of all the technicalities, whether it is respect to manufacturing process, or it respect to any technical queries, right? Because he's learned it over a period of time. So at the top, you need people who are more of generalist, who are more of T-shaped, who has more of T-shaped skills, and at the ground level, you need sometimes more of specialists, right? Who are having a specific skill sets.
Right. So just sort of adding on, I think is the sense that I'm getting is that when you're doing when you're at different stages in terms of a company's life cycle, right? Especially when you're hiring, it's important for the brand and what its value proposition is, not necessarily in terms of the product it's building and for its end users, but the kind of ideals it stands for, the principles it stands for, the brand which centers around the mission and the vision. That needs to be very clear for you to be able to, either go, either the specialist route, the T-shaped route, or the generalist route, because this is what helps you attract and retain talent, right? And taking that a step further, again, is in terms of what you mentioned, Ajay, is the false positives, right? I think I would probably sum it up as, just correct me if I'm wrong, is minimize your bad hires and good and great hires will follow.
You're perfect.
Yeah, awesome.
It's a cycle.
It's a cycle. I think all of us are trying to break the vicious hiring cycle. There's definitely, I think the success stories, and we've got to learn from that and try and see what works best for each company.
Yeah.